The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning at Earth's Planetary Defense Headquarters in Geneva. No alarms sounded. No sirens followed. Just a single encrypted transmission, flagged at the highest diplomatic priority, routed directly to Admiral Victoria Chen's terminal. She read it once, then again, and on the third time, her jaw tightened so hard it ached. Galactic Council notice. The Terran species is hereby summoned to appear before the Compliance Committee at Valdrris Station regarding unauthorized colonial expansion into sectors 447, 448, and 449. A diplomatic shuttle is expected within 30 standard cycles. Failure to comply will result in economic sanctions and restricted transit privileges. Chen didn't blink as the words hung in the air, but something in her expression darkened with every line. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. She had seen this tone before. That polite, bureaucratic certainty that assumed Earth was still new enough to be corrected. She stood slowly and walked to the reinforced window of her office. Below her, Geneva stretched out in orderly silence. Glass towers, transit lines, the steady rhythm of a world that had learned to hide its teeth while it grew them. 15 years. 15 years since humanity had been invited into the Galactic Concordance. 15 years of meetings, treaties, recommendations, and carefully worded restrictions designed by civilizations that had already decided what Earth was allowed to become. Chen exhaled slowly. Behind her, the message replayed itself one more time, as if the galaxy believed repetition would make obedience inevitable. Unauthorized expansion, she muttered under her breath. A faint, humorless smile touched her lips. They really think we expanded without permission. Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, calm, composed, and very, very tired of being underestimated. And for the first time that morning, Admiral Chen didn't think about compliance. She thought about response time. 15 years of being treated like children who didn't know how to play nicely with others. The unauthorized expansion they mentioned, those were colony ships sent to 3 uninhabited systems. Empty worlds with no prior claims, no native life, nothing but rock and ice that humans could terraform over the next century. But the Council had decided that humanity was moving too fast, growing too bold. They needed to be reminded of their place. Admiral Chen turned away from the window and pulled up her secure terminal. Her fingers moved across the holographic keyboard, entering codes that only 5 people on Earth knew. A schematic appeared in the air before her, rotating slowly. 8 kilometers of hardened steel, experimental armor plating, and enough weaponry to crack a moon in half. The indomitable Earth's secret, the galaxy's nightmare, if they only knew it existed. "Get me Captain Okonkwo," Chen said into her calm, "and tell the diplomatic corps that Ambassador Webb needs to pack his bags. He's going to Valdrris." 20 minutes later, Chen sat across from 2 very different people. Captain Sarah Okonkwo was tall and broad-shouldered, her dark skin contrasting with the crisp white of her naval uniform. Her eyes were hard, the kind of hardness that came from seeing friends die in the void. She'd commanded destroyers during the colonial wars, back when Mars and the Belt nearly tore each other apart. She knew what real war looked like. Ambassador Marcus Webb was smaller, older, with gray hair and the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. He'd spent 30 years in diplomatic service, first navigating Earth's fractured political landscape, then dealing with alien species who thought humans were primitive warmongers barely worth acknowledging. "You want to send the Indomitable to a compliance hearing?" Webb said slowly. "That's either brilliance or madness, Admiral. I'm not sure which. It's a statement," Chen replied. She stood and gestured to the hologram, making it expand until the ship filled half the room. "For 15 years, we've played their game. We've sent small ships, humble delegations, and polite requests. We've accepted trade deals that favor them, and colony restrictions that don't apply to anyone else. And what has it gotten us? It's kept us from being expelled from the Concordance," Webb pointed out. "Or worse, targeted by species with bigger militaries." "They don't have bigger militaries," Okonkwo cut in. Her voice was deep and steady. "They have older militaries." "There's a difference," Chen nodded. "The intelligence reports are clear. We've been analyzing Galactic Council fleet capabilities for a decade. Their largest warship, the Krell Dreadnought, is barely 2 kilometers long. Most of their combat vessels are glorified police cutters. Do you know why? Webb leaned back in his chair. Because they've had peace for too long. Warfare in the galaxy is ritualized, limited, almost ceremonial. Exactly, Chen said. They fight wars the way we used to fight duels. Formal, structured with rules everyone agrees to follow. They haven't had a real war, a war of survival in thousands of years. We had one 40 years ago, and we almost destroyed ourselves. She paused, letting that sink in. That desperation, that absolute need to win or die, pushed our technology forward in ways they can't imagine. Okono studied the hologram of the Indomitable. What are your orders, Admiral? The Council expects a shuttle, small, unarmed, carrying a nervous diplomat, and maybe a few aides. They expect us to show up like scolded children, ready to apologize. Chen's expression hardened. Instead, they're going to see what Earth builds when we're serious. Captain Okonkwo, you'll command the Indomitable to Valdrris. Ambassador Webb, you'll be aboard as our diplomatic representative. You will attend their compliance hearing. You will answer their questions, and you will make it absolutely clear that Earth is done being pushed around. Webb was quiet for a long moment. If we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what we've been building. Some species will see it as a threat. The Krell especially. Good, Chen said simply. Let them see. Let them worry. Maybe then they'll think twice before summoning us like servants. The Indomitable had been built in deep space, far beyond Neptune's orbit, where curious eyes couldn't see. Construction had taken 8 years and consumed resources that made politicians back on Earth scream about the budget. But Chen had pushed it through, calling in favors, making promises, and occasionally threatening to resign if she didn't get what she needed. The ship was humanity's insurance policy, a statement written in steel and fire that said, never again would humanity be at someone else's mercy. Captain Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, 3 days later, watching her crew run through final preparations. 12,000 people called this ship home. Engineers, weapons specialists, medical staff, Marines, pilots, and hundreds of others. They were the best Earth had to offer. Volunteers who'd trained for years for a mission they weren't sure would ever come. Status report, Okono said calmly. Her executive officer. Commander Lu Chu looked up from his station. All systems green, Captain. Reactor is running at optimal temperature. Weapons grid is on standby. Navigation has our course plotted to Valdrris. We're ready to jump on your command. Ambassador Webb stepped onto the bridge, looking slightly uncomfortable in his formal diplomatic robes. He'd been aboard for 2 days now, touring the ship, meeting the crew, and trying to wrap his mind around what Earth had built. Ambassador Okonkwo acknowledged. We'll be jumping in 5 minutes. The trip to Valdrris will take 16 hours, and when we arrive, Webb asked, we'll drop out of FTL at the standard arrival point, just like any other ship. By the book, completely legal. Okono smiled thinly. After that, well, I expect we'll get quite a reaction. The jump itself was smooth. The Indomitable's drives, powered by a contained fragment of neutron star material, tore open a hole in space-time and pulled the massive ship through. For 16 hours, they traveled faster than light, crossing distances that would have taken conventional ships weeks. Okono used the time to prepare her crew. When we arrive, every sensor in that system is going to light up. They'll scan us from bow to stern. They'll see our reactor signature, our weapons grid, our armor plating. They'll know exactly what we are. She looked around the bridge at her officers. Some of them will be scared. Some will be angry. Some might even be stupid enough to try something. We will remain calm, professional, and ready for anything. Clear? Yes, Captain, came the unified response. Ambassador Webb spent the journey reviewing his notes and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. He drafted 17 different speeches, each one calibrated for a different scenario. Diplomatic incidents could spiral out of control quickly, especially when nobody knew the rules being broken. 16 hours after jumping, the Indomitable prepared to drop back into normal space. Emergence in 60 seconds, the navigation officer called out. Vrous system coordinates locked. Okonkwo settled into her command chair. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Weapons remain safe. But I want full readiness. Communications. Prepare to transmit our identification and diplomatic credentials on all standard frequencies. Yes, Captain. The seconds counted down. 30, 20, 10. Space twisted, and the Indomitable tore back into reality at the edge of the Valdrris system. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then every alarm on every ship and station in the system started screaming. The Valdrris system was home to the Galactic Council's primary enforcement station, a massive structure that served as both courthouse and military base. Orbiting the system's 4th planet, it played host to dozens of ships from various species, all here to conduct business or serve as security. Commander Threll of the Zenthari fleet was reviewing supply requisitions when his sensor officer started shouting, "Contact! Massive energy signature grid reference 774. Threll's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion in his species. Define massive. Sir, the computer thinks it's a small sun. That was impossible. Threll moved to the sensor station and looked at the readings himself. Then he looked again, certain there must be an error. There wasn't. Something 8 kilometers long had just appeared at the system's edge. Its reactor output was off the scale. Its mass was equal to a small moon, and according to the database, it was broadcasting Terran identification codes. "Get me, Fleet Admiral Crush," Threll said quietly. "Right now." Within minutes, the entire system was in chaos. Ships that had been docked scrambled to launch. Weapons platforms that had been on standby powered up to full capacity. And on the Council station itself, representatives from a dozen species started shouting at each other, demanding to know what was happening. Admiral Kresh of the Kree Empire stared at his tactical display with growing disbelief. The Krell were the galaxy's premier military power, or so they'd believed. Their dreadnoughts were the largest ships in known space. Their warriors were trained from birth. Their honor in combat was unmatched. And yet, this human vessel made their greatest warship look like a child's toy. "Hail them," Crash ordered. His voice was calm, but his subordinates could see the tension in his posture. "Let's find out what Earth thinks they're doing." The communication channel opened. Crash expected to see some human military commander, probably nervous, possibly apologetic. Instead, he saw a human female with steady eyes and not a trace of fear. "This is Captain Sarah Okonkwo of the Earth vessel Indomitable. We are here at the request of the Galactic Council for a compliance hearing. We are transmitting our diplomatic credentials now. Is there a problem, Admiral?" Kresh's translator implant stumbled over the word Indomitable, rendering it roughly as "cannot be defeated." He stared at the human captain. "You are summoned to send a diplomatic shuttle," he managed. "This is a warship." "This is Earth's diplomatic shuttle," Okono replied calmly. "We came as requested. Do you require anything else?" The channel went silent. Cash didn't know what to say. Behind him, his officers were frantically trying to analyze the human ship's capabilities. The reports coming back were terrifying. On the Indomitable's bridge, Commander Liu suppressed a smile. "Captain, we're receiving over 300 scan attempts. Every ship in the system is trying to figure out what we are. Let them look," Okono said. "Open channels to the Council station. Ambassador Webb, you're on." Webb stepped forward, straightening his robes. "Eldris Station, this is Ambassador Marcus Webb of Earth. We received your summons and have arrived as requested. We are prepared to attend the compliance hearing at your earliest convenience. We await your instructions." His voice was perfectly polite, perfectly diplomatic, and absolutely unyielding. On the station, the council members finally stopped shouting at each other. The Lumini representative, an elderly being of pure energy, contained in a crystalline form, spoke first. "Perhaps," she said quietly. "We should have been more specific about our expectations." The Krell representative slammed his fist on the table. "This is an act of aggression. They bring a warship to a diplomatic function. They bring what they choose to bring." The Chire scientist clicked. His species communicated through modulated sounds that translators turned into speech. "The question is, what do we do about it?" "We talk to them," the Luminite said. "What else can we do?" As the council argued, the Indomitable held position at the system's edge, neither advancing nor retreating. On her bridge, Captain Okonkwo watched the tactical display and waited. The galaxy had just gotten its first real look at human determination, and nothing would ever be the same again. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. High ceilings stretched 30 meters above, decorated with floating holographic displays showing the flags and symbols of every member species. The chamber itself was circular, with the council seats elevated on platforms that looked down on whoever stood in the center. It was meant to make visitors feel small, insignificant, and properly humble. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood in that center circle and felt none of those things. He'd been transported to the station 2 hours after the Indomitable's arrival, accompanied by an honor guard of 20 Marines in full-powered armor. The Marines were another gift from Captain Okonkwo, a subtle reminder that Earth didn't come here to beg. They stood now at the chamber's entrance, silent and imposing, their armor, sensor arrays tracking every movement in the room. Webb looked up at the council members arrayed before him, 12 species representing hundreds of worlds and trillions of beings. The Krell sat to his right, their reptilian features twisted in barely concealed anger. The Zenthari bureaucrats shuffled papers nervously to his left. The crystalline lumini pulsed with soft light directly ahead, and scattered among them were the others. The insectoid Xylar, the aquatic Drae, in their water-filled environmental pods. The gaseous Vel contained in their pressure suits. Ambassador Webb of Earth, the Zenthari chairman, began, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. You were summoned here to address concerns about Tan colonial expansion. Instead, you arrive in a vessel of war. Would you care to explain this decision? Webb clasped his hands behind his back. Earth received a summon, requesting our attendance at a compliance hearing. We attended. I'm here as requested. As for our vessel, Earth sent what we considered appropriate for diplomatic missions in the current climate. The current climate? The Krell Admiral growled. What climate requires a warship? The climate where Earth is routinely disrespected, taxed unfairly, and restricted from basic rights afforded to every other species in this concordance, Webb replied calmly. The climate where we're summoned for compliance hearings because we dared to colonize empty worlds that no one else wanted. That climate, Admiral. The chamber erupted in noise. Half the council started shouting at once, their words blending together in the translator systems, until the chairman had to activate the sonic dampeners. Order, the Zenthuri demanded. We will have order. Webb waited patiently. He'd expected this reaction. The galaxy had grown comfortable with humanity playing the role of junior species, grateful just to be included. That comfort was ending today. The Lumini representative spoke, her voice like wind chimes. Ambassador Webb, please understand our concern. Your vessel is unlike anything we have encountered. Our sensor readings suggest capabilities that exceed our understanding of current technology. Surely you can see how this appears threatening. Threatening to whom? Webb asked. We haven't aimed a single weapon. We haven't made any aggressive moves. We simply arrived as summoned. If our ship makes others uncomfortable, perhaps they should ask themselves why they feel threatened by a diplomatic vessel. Because it's not a diplomatic vessel, the Krell Admiral shouted, standing from his platform. It's a dreadnought, a ship designed for war. All of Earth's ships are designed for war, Webb said simply. Because all of Earth's history has taught us that peace is something you maintain through strength, not hope. We learned that lesson the hard way, Admiral. Perhaps your species learned it differently. The Xylar scientist translator clicked rapidly. Ambassador, our analysis of your vessel's design is troubling. The reactor configuration alone suggests technology we believed impossible. The weapon systems, the defensive grids, the computational power required to coordinate such a massive structure. How did humanity achieve this? Webb had been waiting for this question. We achieved it because we had to. Earth's history is not like yours. We didn't discover faster than light travel because we were curious about the stars. We discovered it because we were running out of resources in space, and we needed to expand or die. We didn't develop advanced weapons because we wanted to conquer others. We developed them because we kept almost destroying ourselves. And each time we survived, we learned how to build better defenses for the next conflict. He paused, looking around the chamber. Every species here has a different story of how they came to space. The Lumini evolved beyond physical form and reached the stars through thought alone. The Krell built their empire through honor and martial discipline. The Zenthari achieved it through careful planning and patience. But humanity, we clawed our way out of our gravity well, covered in blood and radiation burns, dragging our technology forward through sheer desperation. So yes, our ships reflect that history. We build them to survive anything, because we've learned that the universe doesn't care about good intentions. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then a Drenni representative spoke, her voice bubbling through her water-filled pod. You speak of survival, Ambassador, but what you've built is not a defensive vessel. The Indomitable has offensive capabilities that could devastate entire fleets. Only if we choose to use them that way, Webb countered. A knife can cut food or cut throats, Representative. The tool is neutral. It's the hand that holds it that matters. Pretty words, the Krell Admiral snarled. But Earth has already shown aggression. Your unauthorized colonies were in unclaimed systems, Webb interrupted. We checked the territorial registries 3 times. Those systems were empty, unclaimed, and open for settlement under the Concordance Charter. We followed every rule, filed every form, and waited the appropriate time periods. Then we sent colony ships to worlds no one else wanted. If that's aggression in your eyes, Admiral, then perhaps your definition needs updating. The Zenthuri chairman's eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress in his species. The concern is not the letter of the law, Ambassador, but the spirit. Humanity is expanding faster than any new species in recorded history. You claim 37 colonies now, with plans for 50 more in the next decade. This growth is unusual. Unusual for you, perhaps, Webb said. But humanity has 12 billion people and growing. We need space, resources, and room to breathe. We're not going to slow down just because it makes others uncomfortable, especially when we're following all the established rules. He let that sink in before continuing. Unless, of course, the Concordance intends to establish new rules specifically targeting humanity. Rules that don't apply to anyone else. The Luminite pulsed brightly, a sign of agitation. Ambassador, please. No one is suggesting discriminatory practices. We are simply trying to understand humanity's intentions. Your rapid growth, your technological advancement, and now this vessel. Can you see how it appears concerning? Webb softened his tone slightly. The Luminina at least seemed genuinely interested in dialogue rather than confrontation. I understand the concern, Representative. Truly, I do. But put yourself in our position. We're newcomers to a galaxy that was already divided into territories and spheres of influence. Every good world was claimed long before we arrived. We're restricted in where we can settle, what we can trade, and who we can ally with. And when we follow all the rules and still succeed, we're called in for compliance hearings. He spread his hands. Earth didn't build the Indomitable because we want to conquer the galaxy. We built her because we refuse to be victims. Never again will humanity be dependent on someone else's mercy. If that makes us different from other species, so be it. But don't mistake our strength for aggression. The IR scientist clicked thoughtfully. The mathematics are fascinating, Ambassador. Our analysis suggests that constructing a vessel like the Indomitable required resources equivalent to building 30 conventional dreadnoughts. From a strategic perspective, it's inefficient. A fleet of smaller ships offers redundancy, tactical flexibility, and distributed threat response. Why build one massive vessel instead? Webb smiled. Leave it to the ZR to focus on the technical aspects, because the Indomitable isn't just a warship representative. She's a symbol, a statement. She tells everyone who sees her that Earth is serious about defending itself. One ship visible and undeniable. It's harder to dismiss than a fleet of smaller vessels, and easier to destroy. The Krell Admiral muttered. You're welcome to try. Webb replied without missing a beat. The chamber went dead silent. I'm sorry, Admiral. Was that inappropriate? I thought we were speaking hypothetically. The Krell Admiral's face darkened, but before he could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The holographic displays flickered, then showed a tactical overview of the system. The Krell fleet was moving. 12 warships, including the Krell's Pride, the dreadnought Warbringer, were breaking orbit and moving toward the system's edge, toward the Indomitable Admiral Kresh. The Zenthari chairman barked. What is the meaning of this? The Krell Admiral's expression was unreadable. I gave no such order. But even as he spoke, a communication came through from the Warbringer. It was Admiral Kresh, the same Krell commander who'd first hailed the Indomitable when she arrived. Forgive the interruption, Council. Kresh's voice boomed through the chamber. But the human vessel represents a potential threat to system security. My fleet is moving to escort it to a more appropriate position, away from the station and civilian traffic. Webb's jaw tightened. This was exactly the kind of posturing he'd hoped to avoid. But deep down, he'd known it was coming. The Krell were a warrior species. Losing face was worse than death to them, and the Indomitable's presence was a direct challenge to their military supremacy. Admiral Kresh Webb said clearly, the Indomitable is in full compliance with arrival protocols. She's maintaining a stationary position at the designated coordinates for visiting vessels. There's no need for an escort. Nevertheless, Kresh replied, my fleet is proceeding. It is a matter of security. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Okonkwo watched the approaching Krell ships with calm eyes. Time to intercept. At current speed, 22 minutes, Commander Lu reported. They're maintaining what they probably think is an intimidating formation. 12 ships in a crescent pattern, trying to look like they could surround us. Could they? Okono asked. Lu actually laughed. Captain, our point defense grid alone could handle everything they're carrying. Those ships are armed with plasma torpedoes and kinetic railguns, effective against ships their own size. Sure, against us, they might scratch the paint. Don't underestimate them, Okono warned. Pride makes people dangerous. They might do something stupid just to prove they're not scared. She opened a channel. Ambassador Webb, are you seeing this? Webb's voice came through steady despite the situation. I am, Captain. The Council is divided on how to respond. I'd recommend not escalating, but also not backing down. Wasn't planning to, Ambassador. We'll hold position and see what they do. Okono cut the channel and addressed her crew. All hands maintain battle stations. Weapons remain safe, but I want targeting solutions on every Krell vessel. Defensive grids to stand by. If they shoot, we intercept. If they try to board, we politely decline. If they try to force us to move, we educate them. Clear? Yes, Captain. Her officers responded. In the council chamber, the tension was thick enough to cut. The various species representatives were arguing among themselves, uncertain about what to do. The Zenthuri wanted to order both fleets to stand down. The more aggressive species saw it as the Krell's right to enforce security. The peaceful ones, like the Lumini, worried about escalation. Webb stood silent, watching it all unfold. This was the critical moment. Earth had made its statement by showing up in the Indomitable. Now the galaxy was testing them, seeing if humanity would back down when pushed. The ZR scientist approached the central platform, his translator clicking. A question for Ambassador Webb, if I may. The chamber quieted. Of course, Webb said. Your ship, the Indomitable. Our scan suggests she carries enough ordnance to level a planetary surface. Is this accurate? I wouldn't know the exact specifications, Webb replied carefully. I'm a diplomat, not an engineer. But hypothetically, the Xylar pressed. If your ship were in combat with the Krell fleet currently approaching it, what would the outcome be? Webb looked directly at the Krell admiral before answering. Hypothetically, Representative, it wouldn't be a fight, it would be an execution. The Indomitable's defensive systems alone could intercept every weapon the Krell fleet possesses simultaneously. Her offensive capabilities are significantly more extensive. You threaten us? The Krell admiral roared. I answer questions truthfully, Webb shot back. You asked about capabilities, not intentions. Earth has no desire to fight the Krell or anyone else. But if your Admiral Crash forces the issue, then yes, the Indomitable will defend herself. And when she does, I guarantee you won't like the results. The Lumini's crystalline form pulsed urgently. This must stop. We cannot have warfare in our own star system. Chairman, you must order both sides to stand down. The Zenthari chairman looked torn, his 4 eyes darting between displays. Admiral Kresh, you will halt your advance immediately. That is a direct order from the Council. But Kresh's response was defiant. With respect, Chairman, fleet security is my jurisdiction. The human vessel will comply with escort protocols or face consequences. 22 minutes had passed. The Krell fleet was now in weapons range of the Indomitable on the human ship's bridge. Alarms chimed softly as targeting computers locked onto the incoming vessels. Captain, the weapons officer reported. They're powering up their weapon systems. Not aimed at us yet, but they're getting ready. Okono took a slow breath. Hail them. One more chance. The channel opened. Admiral Kresh's reptilian face filled the screen. Human vessel, you will adjust your position to coordinates I'm transmitting now. You have 5 minutes to comply. Admiral, Okono said calmly. With all due respect, no. We're in full compliance with system regulations. We have no intention of moving, and we definitely have no intention of being escorted anywhere. If you have concerns about our presence, take them up with the Council. But my ship stays exactly where she is. Kresh's eyes narrowed. You refuse a direct order from the system's security fleet. I refuse an illegal order that has no basis in concordance law. Okono corrected. Admiral, I know what you're trying to do. You want to prove that the Krell are still the galaxy's premier military power. You want to show that we can be pushed around like everyone else. I understand that. But it's not going to happen. Then you force my hand. Crash growled. No, Admiral. You're forcing your own hand. Don't do this. The channel went dead. On the tactical display, the Krell ships began spreading out, trying to encircle the Indomitable. Their weapon systems went to full active status. In the council chamber, every holographic display showed the same thing: two forces on the brink of combat. Webb watched it unfold, his heart pounding, but his face calm. This was it, everything Earth had worked for. Everything they'd hoped to achieve came down to the next few minutes. The Lumini spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ambassador Webb, can you stop this? Webb shook his head slowly. No, Representative. Only Admiral Kresh can stop this now. He has to decide if his pride is worth losing his fleet. You're that confident in your ship's capabilities? I'm that confident, Webb said, in Captain Okonkwo's competence. She won't fire first, but if Crash fires on us, she'll end it quickly. On the Indomitable, a sensor alarm suddenly wailed. Captain, the tactical officer shouted. Missile launch. Single projectile from the Warbringer's port tubes. Time seemed to slow down. Okonkwo had 0.3 seconds to make a decision that would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. Fire back and start a war, or show restraint, and hope one missile was a mistake. She chose a third option: point defense only. Intercept that missile and open a channel to every ship in this system. The Indomitable's defensive grid came alive. Dozens of laser arrays tracked the incoming missile, calculated its trajectory, and fired in a perfectly coordinated pulse. The Krell missile vaporized 200 kilometers from the human ship, turned into expanding plasma by defensive systems that never even strained. Then Okonkwo's face appeared on every screen in the Valdrris system. This is Captain Sarah Okonkwo, of the Earth vessel Indomitable, broadcasting to all ships. Someone just fired on my vessel. I'm choosing to believe it was a mistake, a weapons malfunction, or an accident. But let me be absolutely clear. If anyone fires on this ship again, there won't be enough left of your vessels to send home. She paused, letting her words sink in. Earth came here for a diplomatic hearing. We came in peace, following all regulations and protocols. We have no desire for conflict, but we will not be intimidated, threatened, or attacked. Not today, not ever. The next move is yours, Admiral Crash. Choose wisely. The channel went silent. In the council chamber, you could have heard a pin drop. On the Krell warships, crew stared at their sensors in disbelief. The Indomitable hadn't even flinched when their missile was launched. She'd swatted it from space like a human might swat an insect, casual and effortless. And now she waited, neither advancing nor retreating, giving them one chance to back down with their honor intact. Admiral Crash stared at his tactical display. He'd seen the intercept. He'd watched his best missile, a weapon that had destroyed enemy ships in 3 wars, vanish like it had never existed. And he understood finally what he was facing. The human ship wasn't just bigger, it was better. Generations better. It was what his species might build in another 1,000 years of development if they were lucky. Pride was important, but so was survival. All ships, Kresh said quietly, stand down. Return to patrol orbits. His officers looked at him in shock, but none dared to question. Slowly, the Krell fleet broke formation and withdrew. The crisis was over. On the Indomitable's bridge, Commander Liu let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Captain, they're withdrawing. Okono nodded slowly. Good. Maintain our position and defensive readiness. This isn't over yet. We've just moved from the shooting phase to the talking phase. In the council chamber, Ambassador Webb straightened his robes and looked up at the assembled representatives. Gentlemen, ladies, and beings of various compositions. I believe we were discussing Earth's colonial expansion. Shall we continue? The council chamber remained silent for a full minute after Admiral Kresh's fleet withdrew. Representatives from 12 species stared at Ambassador Webb, trying to process what had just happened. The Krell, the galaxy's premier warrior race, had backed down, not because they were cowards, but because they'd realized they were outmatched. The Zenthari chairman was the first to speak, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. Ambassador Webb, what you just witnessed was nearly an act of war. A Krell missile was fired at your vessel. A mistake, clearly, Webb replied smoothly. Admiral Crash has already withdrawn his fleet. I see no reason to escalate the situation further. Earth is willing to overlook the incident in the interest of diplomatic progress. The Krell admiral in the chamber looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. Being shown mercy by a species they'd considered inferior was perhaps worse than being defeated outright. But he said nothing. His warrior's discipline keeping him silent. The Gyre scientist translator clicked rapidly. Ambassador, I must ask a direct question. How many vessels like the Indomitable does Earth possess? Webb smiled slightly. That's classified information, Representative. I'm sure you understand. The question is relevant to Council security assessments. The Gyre pressed. If humanity has built a fleet of such vessels, the power balance of the entire galaxy shifts. And if we've built only one, Webb countered, does that make Earth less deserving of respect? Should we only be taken seriously if we have enough firepower to threaten everyone? The Luminite pulsed softly. You make a fair point, Ambassador. But surely you can understand our concern. In the span of 15 years, humanity has gone from first contact to building the most powerful warship in known space. That rate of progress is unprecedented. Webb nodded. It is. And do you know why, Representative? Because humanity's history is one of constant pressure. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us at every turn. We survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and our own self-destructive tendencies. We learned to innovate or die. That pressure never let up, not even when we reached space. He began to pace slowly, his words measured and deliberate. Other species talk about the colonial wars like they were some kind of aberration, a temporary madness that humanity fell into. But those wars were just another chapter in our long history of survival. Mars wanted independence. The Belt wanted resources. Earth wanted to maintain order. And for 5 years, we fought. Not with ritual combat or limited engagement, but with the full fury of 3 billion people trying to survive. The Drenny representative bubbled through her water pod. Those wars nearly destroyed your species. Over 50 million casualties, multiple ships lost, entire colonies wiped out. You speak of it like it was a lesson rather than a tragedy. It was both, Webb said quietly. Those 50 million dead taught us something the rest of the galaxy forgot long ago. War is not a game. It's not ritual or theater. It's survival at its most desperate and brutal. And the weapons we build, the ships we construct, they reflect that understanding. We build them to win, because losing means extinction. He stopped pacing and looked directly at the assembled council. The Indomitable exists because humanity will never again put its fate in someone else's hands. We've seen what happens when you're weak, when you're dependent, when you can't defend yourself. We've lived through it, died in it, and learned from it. So yes, we built the most powerful warship in the galaxy. And if that makes you uncomfortable, well, imagine how we felt for 15 years, being treated like children who needed supervision. The chamber erupted again in arguments. Some species felt Webb's words were threatening. Others saw his point. The Zenthari tried to restore order while the Krell sat in silent fury, and the Luminina attempted to mediate between the more aggressive factions. On the Indomitable, Captain Okonkwo monitored the Council's feed while keeping one eye on her tactical display. The Krell fleet had withdrawn to standard patrol orbits, but they were still watching, still analyzing, probably still trying to find a weakness in the human ship's defenses. Status report, she ordered. Commander Liu checked his stations. All systems nominal, Captain. The intercept of the Krell missile caused 0 damage. Point defense grid performed flawlessly. Reactor output remained stable at 23%. We could maintain this readiness state for 6 months if needed. Good. What about the rest of the system? Every ship with sensors is scanning us continuously. We're picking up over 400 active sensor sweeps. They're trying to understand our technology. Liu smiled slightly. They're not going to figure much out. Our hull composition alone is going to baffle their analyst for years. Okono nodded. The Indomitable's armor was a carefully guarded secret. Standard ship armor in the galaxy was mostly ableve compounds designed to disperse energy weapons. Humanity had taken a different approach, using layered composite materials that Earth's violent history had perfected. The outer hull could withstand direct hits from weapons that would vaporize conventional ships. Captain, the communications officer spoke up. We're receiving a tight beam transmission from one of the CR research vessels. They're requesting permission to conduct detailed scans of our hull structure. They're offering payment and trade credits. Deny the request politely, Okono said. Tell them Earth appreciates their scientific curiosity, but cannot share military specifications at this time. Yes, Captain. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the ship's intelligence officer, approached the command chair. Captain, I've been analyzing the response patterns from the various species in system. Most are showing appropriate caution mixed with curiosity, but the Crow are different. Their fleet movements suggest they're running combat simulations against us. Yes, ma'am. They're trying to figure out how they'd fight us if it came to actual warfare. So far, their simulations keep ending badly for them. Okono considered that the Kreller warriors backing down hurts their pride. They need to save face somehow. Prove to themselves they could fight us if necessary, even if they know they'd lose. Should we be concerned? Always. Pride makes people dangerous. Keep monitoring their movements. If they start doing anything genuinely threatening, I want to know immediately. Back in the council chamber, the Zenthari chairman finally managed to restore order. Enough. We will proceed in an orderly fashion. Ambassador Webb, you were summoned here to address Earth's unauthorized colonial expansion. Let us return to that topic. Webb straightened. Very well. Earth has established colonies in 3 systems: Kepler 442, Kepler 186, and Ross 128. All 3 systems were unclaimed according to Concordance territorial registries. All 3 were submitted for claim through proper channels with all required documentation. All 3 waited through the mandatory review period with no objections filed. What exactly is unauthorized about following every established procedure? The Zenthuri shuffled papers nervously. The issue is not the legality, but the speed. 3 new colonies in a single year is unprecedented for a species of your age in the Concordance. Our age? Webb's tone sharpened. You mean our status as newcomers? Let me ask you something, Chairman. How many colonies did the Zenthari establish in their first 50 years in the Concordance? The chairman's eyes blinked in sequence. That was different circumstances. How many? 17, the chairman admitted quietly. 17 and 50 years. And how many did the Krell establish? The Krell admiral growled but answered. 23. The Lumini, the crystalline being pulsed. 12. Though our species reproduces slowly, Webb spread his hands. So the precedent is clear. New species expand rapidly when they join the Concordance. They claim territory, establish colonies, and secure resources for their growing populations. Earth is doing exactly what every other species did. The only difference is that we're doing it efficiently, with better technology, and some of you don't like it. The Dana representative made a bubbling sound that translated to irritation. The difference, Ambassador, is that those species didn't arrive with warships that could defeat entire fleets. They earned their place through trade, diplomacy, and gradual integration. They earned their place by being lucky enough to develop space travel before anyone else claimed all the good real estate. Webb corrected. Earth arrived late to the party. Every habitable world within a 100 light-years was already claimed. Every resource-rich system had flags planted. We're left with the scraps, the difficult worlds, the systems no one else wanted. And when we successfully colonized those difficult worlds, were called in for compliance hearings. He let his frustration show now, calculated and controlled. Do you want to know what Earth's problem is? We're too good at surviving. We take worlds that other species consider uninhabitable and make them work. We develop technology faster because we have to. We build ships like the Indomitable because we've learned that depending on others' protection is a recipe for extinction. And instead of being impressed, instead of welcoming a species that's proven its competence and resilience, you treat us like threats. The chamber was silent. Several representatives looked uncomfortable. The truth of Webb's words was undeniable, even if it made them uneasy. The Xyler scientist clicked thoughtfully. Your points have merit, Ambassador, but you must understand the perspective of established species. The galaxy has been relatively stable for millennia. Wars are ritualized, borders are respected, and change happens gradually. Then humanity arrives and disrupts everything. You grow too fast, build too powerfully, and push boundaries that others accept it is fixed. Can you blame us for being cautious? Cautious is fine, Webb said. Cautious is smart, but there's a difference between caution and discrimination. Earth has broken no laws, violated no treaties, and threatened no one. Yet we're summoned for compliance hearings, subjected to additional scrutiny, and now our diplomatic vessel is fired upon. At what point does caution become oppression? The luminate dimmed slightly, a sign of deep thought. Ambassador Webb, I believe I speak for many here when I say that humanity's arrival has been challenging for us. We are old species set in our ways. Change comes slowly for us, but you are young, dynamic, and driven. It's like watching a child grow into an adult in the span of days. It's disconcerting. Webb softened his tone. I understand Representative truly, but that child is going to grow regardless of your comfort. The question is whether you'll accept them as equals, or keep treating them like they need supervision. Earth is here to stay. We're not going away. We're not slowing down. And we're not going to apologize for being successful. The sooner the Concordance accepts that, the sooner we can move forward as genuine partners. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared again throughout the station. Captain Okonkwo's voice cut across all channels. Calm but urgent. Council Station, this is the Indomitable. We're detecting a quantum fluctuation at the system's helipause. Something large is about to drop out of FTL. Multiple contacts. Recommend defensive alert. The holographic displays shifted, showing the outer edge of the Valdrris system. Okonkwo was right. The telltale distortions of FTL emergence were appearing, and the energy signatures were enormous. 6 more ships tore into reality, each one nearly as large as the Indomitable. The council chamber descended into chaos. Species representatives started shouting, demanding explanations. The Krell Admiral was on his feet, roaring about invasion. Even the calm Lumini began pulsing rapidly. Webb felt his heart sink. This wasn't supposed to happen. Earth had sent only 1 ship. These new arrivals weren't part of the plan. Then the communication came through, and Webb's confusion turned to cold dread. Attention Valdrris system. This is the HFY war fleet of the Krell Empire. We have detected hostile actions against Concordance vessels, and are responding with appropriate force. All ships will stand down and prepare for inspection. These weren't human ships. They were Krell reinforcements called in by Admiral Kresh before his fleet had even engaged. He'd planned this from the start, an overwhelming show of force meant to put humanity in its place. But Kresh hadn't counted on his own ships backing down. Now his reinforcements had arrived, and the situation had gone from tense to potentially catastrophic. On the Indomitable, Okonkwo watched the 6 kill dreadnoughts move into formation. Combat assessment. Lieutenant Chen. Chen worked her console rapidly. 6 Krell heavy dreadnoughts, each approximately 2 kilometers in length. Combined displacement equivalent to 4 Indomitables, heavy plasma batteries, torpedo launchers, and what appear to be experimental particle beam weapons. They're coordinating through a tactical network. Combat simulations suggest they're planning a combined assault strategy. Can we handle them? Chen looked up, her expression serious. Yes, Captain, but not without taking damage. These aren't the patrol ships from earlier. These are their frontline warships, and they're bringing everything they have. Okono nodded slowly. Options. We could withdraw, Commander Lu suggested. Jump out of the system and let the Council handle the diplomatic fallout. That would look like we're scared, the weapons officer pointed out. Like we can talk tough but run when actually challenged. Or Lieutenant Chen said quietly, we could stay and show them exactly what the Indomitable can do. But Captain, if we do that, if we engage 6 Krell dreadnoughts and win, there's no walking that back. The galaxy will know for certain that humanity has achieved military supremacy. Every species will react to that knowledge. Some might seek alliance. Others might seek to destroy us before we become unstoppable. Okonkwo sat back in her command chair, her mind racing through possibilities. This was the moment Admiral Chen had warned her about. The moment when Earth's secret stopped being secret and became reality for the entire galaxy. In the council chamber, Ambassador Webb watched the Krell reinforcements on the displays. The HFY fleet was moving toward the Indomitable in a clear attack formation. This wasn't posturing anymore. This was preparation for actual combat. The Zenthari chairman looked panicked. Admiral Kresh, you called for reinforcements without council authorization. The Krell admiral in the chamber had the decency to look uncomfortable. It was a precautionary measure. I didn't expect the HFY fleet to arrive so quickly, and I certainly didn't authorize them to take aggressive action. Can you recall them? The Lumen asked urgently. The hegemony fleet answers to the War Council, not to individual commanders. I have no authority over them. Webb stepped forward. Then I suggest, Chairman, that you find someone who does have authority, because if those ships attack the Indomitable, there's going to be debris floating in the system for the next 1,000 years. You cannot possibly fight 6 dreadnoughts, the Krell admiral protested. No. Webb's expression was grim. Would you like to bet your fleet on that assumption, Admiral? Because Captain Okonkwo is currently calculating how to disable or destroy those ships with minimum loss of life. She's very good at her job. The question is, whether your war council is willing to sacrifice 6 dreadnoughts to test Earth's capabilities. The Hijgamani fleet commander's voice boomed across all channels. Human vessel, you will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for inspection. You have 5 minutes to comply. Okono's response was immediate. Negative, Hegemony Fleet. The Indomitable is here under diplomatic protection and will not submit to inspection. If you attempt to board this vessel or take hostile action, you will be met with appropriate defensive force. I suggest you reconsider your position. We are the Hegemony Fleet of the Krell Empire. We do not reconsider. Then you're about to learn a very expensive lesson, Okono said quietly. She cut the channel and looked at her crew. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Weapons free. Defensive priority. If they shoot, we defend. If they try to board, we repel. If they force combat, we end it as quickly as possible with minimum casualties. Execute. The Indomitable came fully alive. Every weapon system powered up, every defensive grid activated. The ship's AI began running combat calculations at speeds the Krell couldn't match. Targeting solutions appeared for all 6 enemy vessels, identifying critical systems, weaknesses, and optimal firing patterns. On the bridge, every officer was focused and ready. They'd trained for this moment, hoping it would never come, but prepared for it nonetheless. Commander Liu spoke quietly. Captain, the Hijgamani fleet is charging weapons. They're serious about this. Okono took a deep breath. Ambassador Webb, I hope you're ready, because in about 2 minutes, the galaxy is going to see what happens when someone pushes humanity too far. In the council chamber, representatives held their breath, watching the displays. The 2 forces were seconds from combat, and then at the last possible moment, a new voice cut across all channels. Old, powerful, and absolute in its authority. Hegemony Fleet, this is War Eldest Vesh. You will stand down immediately. That is an order from the highest authority of the Krell Empire. Any ship that fires without my express permission will be considered rogue and hunted down. Do you understand? The Hegemony Fleet commander's voice was shaken. War Eldest. We were responding to... I know what you were responding to, Commander. And you were about to start a war that the Krell Empire cannot win. Stand down. Slowly, reluctantly, the 6 Krell dreadnoughts powered down their weapons. The crisis was over for now. But as Ambassador Webb watched the ships withdraw, he knew the truth. Earth had just shown the galaxy its teeth, and nothing would ever be the same. The council chamber remained frozen for a full 30 seconds after War Eldest's command. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The weight of what had almost happened hung in the air like a physical presence. Then the Zenthari chairman cleared his throat, a sound that translated across species as profound discomfort. Perhaps we should take a recess. Clearly emotions are running high, and we all need time to process recent events. No, Ambassador Webb said firmly. Everyone turned to look at him. No recess, no delay. We're going to settle this right now today, before any more fleets show up and turn this diplomatic mission into an actual war zone. The Krell Admiral bristled. You dare speak to the Council with such... Yes, I dare, Webb interrupted. Because if I don't, if we all walk away and pretend the last hour didn't happen, we'll be right back here in a month or a year, going through the same dance. Humanity will expand. Someone will object, fleets will be called, and eventually, someone's going to make a mistake that gets millions killed. So no, Admiral, no recess. We talk now. The Luminite pulsed softly. The ambassador makes a valid point. What happened here today revealed truths that all of us need to address. Perhaps it's better to do so while the fear is still fresh, before pride and politics have time to obscure reality. The Zenthari chairman's eyes blinked rapidly, but he nodded. Very well. Ambassador Webb, you have the floor. Speak plainly. What does Earth want? Webb took a moment to gather his thoughts. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. He couldn't afford to be weak, but he also couldn't afford to be threatening. The line between respect and fear was razor thin. Earth wants what every species wants, he began. Security, prosperity, room to grow, a voice in the decisions that affect us. We want to be treated as equals, not as junior partners who need permission to breathe. We want the same rights, the same opportunities, and the same respect that every other Concordance member enjoys. He paused, making eye contact with each representative in turn. But more than that, we want an end to the double standards. When the Zenthari expanded aggressively in their first century, it was called visionary. When the Krell built their military, it was called necessary. When the GR pushed the boundaries of technology, it was called progress. But when humanity does any of these things, it's called threatening. Why? The Drani representative bubbled thoughtfully. Perhaps because humanity does all of these things simultaneously. You expand aggressively, while building advanced military technology, while pushing scientific boundaries. It's the totality that concerns us. Ambassador, or perhaps Webb countered. It's because humanity succeeds at all of these things. Let me tell you about Earth's history. Not the sanitized version we presented at first contact, but the real story. He began to pace slowly, his words measured and deliberate. 5,000 years ago, give or take, humans were scattered across one continent in small tribes, fighting each other for resources. We had fire, basic tools, and not much else. Every other species in this chamber was exploring space while we were still figuring out agriculture. The Xiar scientist clicked in acknowledgement. Your species developed late compared to galactic standards. This is known. What's not known is why we developed so fast once we started. Webb continued. Earth is a death world by galactic standards. It has extreme weather, violent tectonics, and more ways to kill you than most species can imagine. Our planet tried to exterminate us repeatedly. Ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues, droughts, floods. Every few thousand years, something would knock humanity down to near extinction levels. He stopped pacing and faced the council directly. But we survived every time. And each survival made us smarter, tougher, more adaptable. We learned to build better tools because we had to. We learned to cooperate in larger groups because individual families couldn't survive alone. We learned to innovate because tradition wasn't enough to keep us alive. The Lumini dimmed slightly. You're saying that hardship drove your advancement. Hardship, desperation, and the absolute certainty that if we didn't solve problems, we'd die, Webb agreed. Other species developed in relatively stable environments. They had time to consider ethical implications, to debate philosophical points, to advance slowly and carefully. Humanity didn't have that luxury. We advanced fast or we went extinct. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Look at our technological development curve. For thousands of years, it's almost flat. Basic agriculture, early metallurgy, simple machines. Then about 500 years ago, it suddenly shoots upward. Do you know what changed? The Zenthari chairman studied the graph. Your species began cooperating on a global scale. We began competing on a global scale. Webb corrected. Different nations, different cultures, all pushing each other. If one group developed better weapons, everyone else had to match them or be conquered. If one society made a scientific breakthrough, others had to catch up or fall behind. Competition drove innovation faster than cooperation ever could. The Krell admiral leaned forward, interest overcoming his earlier anger. You advanced through warfare. Through competition, Webb clarified. Sometimes that competition was warfare, yes. Sometimes it was economic. Sometimes it was purely scientific. Different groups trying to be first to make discoveries. But the pressure never let up. And about 80 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves because of it. The chamber went quiet. Most species knew that Earth had gone through some kind of nuclear conflict, but the details were classified. Webb continued, his voice softer now. We call it the 48-hour war. 2 major power blocks, decades of tension, and a miscommunication that led to nuclear weapons being launched. For 48 hours, Earth burned. 16 major cities were destroyed. 80 million people died in the initial strikes. Another 200 million died in the aftermath from radiation, starvation, and disease. The Drenny's water pod bubbled sympathetically. Ambassador, I'm sorry. We didn't know the extent. We don't talk about it much, Webb admitted. It's our greatest shame and our most important lesson, because in those 48 hours, humanity learned something that we've carried forward ever since. We're really, really good at killing each other. Terrifyingly good. And if we don't control that capability, channel it, direct it toward productive ends, we'll wipe ourselves out. He gestured at the holographic display, changing it to show the Indomitable. This ship isn't a weapon of conquest, it's a weapon of prevention. Earth built her because we know what happens when you're not strong enough to defend yourself. We've been conquered, occupied, subjugated. We've been the victims of stronger powers, and we decided as a species that we'd never be victims again. The Xylar scientist clicked rapidly. But Ambassador, the logic is flawed. If every species builds weapons to prevent victimization, you create an arms race that leads to the very conflict you're trying to avoid. Only if everyone's goal is conquest, Webb replied. The Indomitable exists to defend, not to attack. Yes, she's capable of devastating offensive action, but so is a knife. And we don't ban knives because they could be used to harm. We trust that the person holding the knife has good intentions. And if that trust is misplaced, the Zenthari chairman asked quietly. Webb smiled grimly. Then you have bigger problems than what kind of weapon they're holding. Chairman, humanity isn't asking the Concordants to trust us blindly. We're asking you to judge us by our actions, not your fears. In 15 years, Earth has founded colonies, established trade relationships, contributed to scientific research, and participated in galactic governance. We haven't attacked anyone. We haven't threatened anyone. We've simply worked hard to secure our place in the galaxy. Until today, the Krell Admiral muttered. Today, you brought a warship to a diplomatic hearing. Today, Earth made a statement, Webb corrected. We're done being dismissed, done being talked down to, done accepting treatment that you'd never subject any other species to. The Indomitable's presence was meant to make you uncomfortable. Yes, to make you reconsider your assumptions about humanity. Apparently it worked. The Lumini pulsed brightly. Perhaps too well, Ambassador. You frightened a great many beings today, not just in this chamber, but across the galaxy. News of your ship's capabilities will spread. Species will react, and not all reactions will be rational. I know, Webb acknowledged, but the alternative was worse. If we'd shown up in a small shuttle like you expected, this compliance hearing would have been a formality. You'd have slapped our wrists, imposed restrictions, and sent us home properly chastened. Earth would have learned that being polite and compliant gets you nowhere. The next time, we might not have been so patient. He let that implication hang in the air. This way, at least we're having an honest conversation. You know what humanity is capable of. You know we're not going to be pushed around. And now we can negotiate as equals rather than as master and subject. The Zenthari chairman was quiet for a long moment, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he processed. You're asking for full status in the Concordance. Not associate membership, but full representation with all rights and privileges. Yes, including veto power on the High Council. Yes, and you want your colonial expansion to be recognized without additional restrictions. We want the same restrictions that apply to everyone else, Webb clarified. No more, no less. If there's a waiting period for territorial claims, we'll wait. If there are environmental impact assessments required, we'll comply. But we won't accept rules that apply only to humanity, simply because you're uncomfortable with our success. The Krell Admiral stood. And what guarantee do we have that Earth won't use its military superiority to dominate the Concordance? That you won't turn the Indomitable, and whatever sister ships you've built against us? Webb met the Admiral's gaze steadily. The same guarantee you give us, Admiral. None. The Concordance is built on mutual cooperation and self-interest, not enforceable guarantees. Each species could betray the others at any time. They don't, because cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict. Earth is no different. We gain more from peaceful trade and shared research than we'd ever gained from conquest. Pretty words, the Admiral growled, but words are cheap. Then judge us by our actions, Webb shot back. Over the next decade, watch what Earth does. If we start conquering territories, breaking treaties, or threatening members, then you'll have evidence of malicious intent. But if we continue, as we have been, expanding peacefully, trading fairly, and contributing to galactic society, then you'll know your fears were unfounded. The IR scientist translator clicked thoughtfully. Ambassador, may I ask an indelicate question? Of course, Representative. How many ships like the Indomitable has Earth constructed? The chamber went silent. Every representative leaned forward, waiting for the answer. This was the question everyone wanted to ask, but had been afraid to voice directly. Webb considered his response carefully. He could lie, inflate the numbers to make Earth seem more powerful than it was, or he could tell the truth and hope that honesty would build trust. He chose honesty, but with a caveat. The Indomitable is currently Earth's only fully operational Titan-ass warship, he said clearly. The relief in the chamber was palpable. However, he continued, and the relief evaporated. There are 6 more under construction at various stages of completion. The furthest along will be operational within 18 months. The others will follow at approximately 6-month intervals. The numbers sank in. 7 Titan-ass warships, 7 vessels, each capable of fighting entire fleets. It was a force that would make Earth not just a power in the galaxy, but potentially the dominant military power. The Drenny representative bubbled in distress. Ambassador, surely you can see how this appears threatening. 7 such vessels would give Earth the ability to project force across the entire concordance. Or to defend the entire concordance, Webb replied. Representative, let me share something that War Eldest Vesh said to me privately before this hearing began. He told me that the galaxy has become complacent, that warfare has become so ritualized, so limited in scope that most species have forgotten what a real military threat looks like. He pulled up another display, this one showing the outer regions of the galaxy. Beyond concordant space, there are forces that don't play by civilized rules. Pirate kingdoms that raid colony worlds. Rogue AI collectives that view organic life as a resource to harvest. Remnant war machines from ancient conflicts that still hunt and kill. And further out, unknown threats that we haven't even encountered yet. The Lumini pulsed uncertainly. These threats are known, Ambassador. They're managed through coordinated defense and careful monitoring. They're managed through luck and distance, Webb corrected. None of them have decided to seriously challenge concordant space because it hasn't been worth their effort. But what happens when something does decide we're worth attacking? What happens when a threat emerges that doesn't care about ritual warfare or limited engagement? He gestured at the display, showing the Indomitable. Earth builds these ships because we've learned a hard truth. Peace is maintained through strength, not hope. The galaxy has enjoyed millennia of relative stability. That's wonderful. But stability breeds complacency, and complacency gets you killed when a real threat emerges. The Zyar scientist clicked rapidly. You're suggesting that humanity's military buildup is actually beneficial to the concordance. I'm suggesting that having a species in the concordance that remembers how to fight real wars, that builds weapons designed for actual survival rather than ritual combat, might not be the threat you think it is. Webb replied. Think about it logically. Representative, if Earth wanted to conquer the galaxy, would we have spent 15 years establishing trade relationships and diplomatic ties? Would we have contributed to research initiatives and participated in cultural exchanges? Or would we have done what conquerors do, shown up with overwhelming force and demanded submission? The chamber was quiet as the representatives considered his words. Finally, the Zenthuri chairman spoke. What you're proposing, Ambassador, is a fundamental shift in the concordance power structure. Earth would effectively become a military guarantor, a deterrent force that other species rely on for protection. That's a significant responsibility. It is, Webb agreed, and Earth doesn't take it lightly. But we're willing to shoulder that responsibility if it means we're treated as equals rather than potential threats. The Lumini dimmed thoughtfully. There's wisdom in what you say, Ambassador. But wisdom and politics are different things. Many species will resist giving Earth such status out of fear, pride, or simple conservatism. How do we bridge that gap? Webb smiled slightly. The same way any society bridges gaps through compromise, negotiation, and time. I'm not expecting the concordance to vote us full status today, but I do expect this compliance hearing to be dismissed. Earth has broken no laws, and we won't be punished for success. In return, we're willing to make certain commitments, such as the Zenthari chairman asked. Earth will share defensive technology with concordance members, not weapons, but shield generators, advanced sensors, and point defense systems. We'll contribute to coordinated defense initiatives in border regions. We'll participate in joint military exercises to help other species modernize their tactical thinking, and we'll commit to not expanding our Titan-class fleet beyond the 7, currently planned without concordance oversight and approval. The offers hung in the air. They were substantial, giving other species access to technology that could significantly upgrade their defensive capabilities while limiting Earth's military expansion. The Krell admiral leaned back, considering, and in exchange, The Concordance recognizes Earth's right to expand into unclaimed territories without additional restrictions. We're granted full council status with proportional voting rights and veto power on matters affecting our core interests, and we're treated with the same respect and consideration given to any established member species. You drive a hard bargain, Ambassador, the Zenthari chairman observed. Webb shrugged. Earth learned negotiation through hardship just like everything else. We know what we're worth, and we won't settle for less. The Xylar scientist clicked what translated as amusement. I find myself liking humanity more the longer I talk to you, Ambassador. You're pragmatic, direct, and refreshingly honest about your capabilities and intentions. Very well. I vote to dismiss the compliance hearing and begin formal negotiations for Earth's upgraded status in the Concordance. One by one, other representatives voiced their agreement. Not all were happy about it. The Krell looked like they'd swallowed something bitter, but even the Admiral had to acknowledge the logic of Webb's proposals. Finally, the Zenthari chairman spoke. By majority decision, this compliance hearing is dismissed. Earth has committed no violations of Concordance law. Furthermore, this council recognizes that humanity's status in the Concordance requires review and updating to reflect current realities. Formal negotiations will begin within 30 standard cycles. Webb bowed slightly. The people of Earth thanked the council for its wisdom. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, the Luminae approached Webb privately. Her crystalline form pulsed with soft colors that indicated thoughtfulness. Ambassador, a word, if I may. Of course, Representative. What you said today about Earth being willing to defend the Concordance, did you mean it? Webb met her gaze steadily. Every word. Humanity knows what it's like to face extinction. We wouldn't wish that on anyone, not even our rivals. If there's a threat to concordant space, Earth will stand with the rest of the galaxy against it. The Luminae pulsed brighter. I hope you're right, Ambassador, because I've been alive for 3,000 years, and I've seen patterns that shorter-lived species miss. The galaxy moves in cycles. Right now, we're in a period of stability, but such periods always end. Always. And when this one ends, having a species that remembers how to truly fight might be the only thing that saves us all. Webb felt a chill run down his spine. Representative, are you saying you know of a specific threat? Nothing concrete, the Luminae admitted. Just whispers. Signals from the dark spaces between galaxies. Energy readings that don't match anything in our databases. It could be nothing. Natural phenomena we haven't studied yet. Or it could be something we should be very worried about. Have you reported this to the Council? The Luminae dimmed. I have mentioned it several times over the past century. Most dismiss it as the paranoia of an old being who has lived too long. Perhaps they're right. But I've learned to trust my instincts, Ambassador. And my instincts tell me that humanity arrived in this galaxy at exactly the right time. She drifted away before Webb could ask more questions, leaving him alone with troubling thoughts. He pushed them aside for now. There would be time to investigate the Luminae's concerns later. Right now, he had a success to report to Earth. On the Indomitable, Captain Okonkwo received the news with quiet satisfaction. Stand down from battle stations, said Condition Yellow, and maintain standard defensive posture. All department heads, prepare status reports. I want to know if we sustained any stress damage during our power-ups. Commander Liu smiled. Captain, I don't think we even broke a sweat. The Indomitable performed flawlessly. Good, but I still want those reports. We pushed systems that have never been tested under actual threat conditions. I need to know we're still at 100%. Yes, ma'am. Okano turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Admiral Chen. Encrypted Priority 1. Tell her the diplomatic mission was successful. Earth's position in the Concordance will be upgraded. Oh, and let her know we made quite an impression. The communications officer grinned. I think that might be an understatement, Captain. Probably, but let's keep it professional for the official reports. Okono allowed herself a small smile. We can celebrate once we're home. As the Indomitable prepared for the long journey back to Earth, sensor arrays throughout the Valdrris system continued tracking her. Every species was analyzing the data they'd collected, trying to understand how humanity had achieved such technological superiority in so short a time. In a Xylar research vessel, scientists pored over the sensor readings with fascination bordering on obsession. The Indomitable's reactor output suggested energy generation methods they'd theorized, but never successfully implemented. The hull composition showed metallurgical techniques that seemed impossible given Earth's available resources. And the computational power required to coordinate such a massive vessel suggested artificial intelligence far beyond current galactic standards. How did they do it? One scientist clicked to another. Their species is barely 5,000 years old. We've been developing technology for 50,000 years, and they've surpassed us in multiple fields. The senior researcher clicked thoughtfully. Necessity. They developed under pressure we can barely imagine. While we had the luxury of careful, methodical research, they had to innovate or die. Every breakthrough was driven by desperation. That kind of motivation accelerates development in ways peaceful progress never could. Should we be worried? We should be respectful, the senior researcher corrected, and perhaps a bit envious. Humanity has achieved in centuries what took us millennia. That's not a threat. That's a lesson. In the Krei fleet, the mood was darker. Admiral Kresh stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the retreating form of the Indomitable on his displays. His warriors had backed down twice. The humiliation was almost unbearable. Admiral, his second-in-command, ventured carefully. The war eldest was correct to intervene. We would have lost that engagement. Kresh's claws flexed, scraping against the command chair's armrests. I know that's what makes it worse. The Krell have been the galaxy's premier warriors for 10,000 years. We've won hundreds of campaigns, conquered dozens of systems, and never met a force we couldn't defeat until today. Humanity fights differently than we do, the second-in-command observed. They don't see warfare as ritual or honor. They see it as survival. That makes them unpredictable and dangerous. It also makes them effective, Kresh admitted grudgingly. I've been reviewing their military history, the colonial wars, their world conflicts, even their ancient tribal battles. They're vicious, innovative, and absolutely committed to victory at any cost. They're what the Krell used to be before we became civilized. Are you suggesting we should be more like them? Kresh was quiet for a long moment. I'm suggesting we should remember what real warfare looks like. We've been fighting ritual battles for so long that we forgot war isn't about honor or glory. It's about surviving when someone wants you dead. Humanity remembers that. Perhaps it's time we remembered it too. Back on Earth in the Planetary Defense Headquarters, Admiral Chen read the encrypted reports from the Indomitable with growing satisfaction. She'd gambled everything on one bold move, and it had paid off. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's junior partner. They were equals now, respected, and perhaps a little feared. Her assistant entered the office. Admiral, the President is requesting an immediate briefing. Tell her I'll be there in 10 minutes. Chen pulled up the holographic display of Earth's orbital shipyards. 6 massive structures hung in the void, each one building a sister ship to the Indomitable. Construction was ahead of schedule. The gamble had paid off, yes, but Chen knew the real work was just beginning. Earth now had to prove it could be a responsible power, a trustworthy ally, and a capable defender. The galaxy would be watching every move humanity made. No pressure, she thought. Riley. Her terminal chimed with an incoming message. It was from Captain Okonkwo, personal and encrypted. Chen opened it. Admiral, mission successful. The galaxy knows what we can do now. But there's something else. The Lumini representative mentioned detecting unusual signals from deep space. She seemed genuinely concerned, even though the Council has dismissed her warnings. I think we should investigate. If there's a threat out there that has a 3,000-year-old energy being worried, we need to know about it. Okono out. Chen stared at the message for a long moment. Then she began typing orders. If there was something dangerous in the dark spaces of the galaxy, something the established species were too complacent to take seriously, then humanity would investigate. Not because they were looking for trouble, but because they understood a fundamental truth the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. The best way to survive a threat was to see it coming before it arrived. She sent the orders and stood, preparing for her meeting with the President. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy today. They'd made a statement that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. And now, like it or not, humanity was responsible for backing up that statement with action. The easy part was over. Now came the hard work of proving Earth deserved the respect they demanded. Admiral Chen grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, her mind already racing ahead to the next challenge, the next crisis, the next opportunity to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. Behind her, the holographic display continued, showing the construction yards where 6 more giants slowly took shape in the void. The Indomitable had siblings coming, and when they arrived, The galaxy would have no choice but to accept the new reality. Humanity was here to stay, and they were done apologizing for